Hi, welcome to episode 39 of the American Tributaries podcast, where to break out of the bubbles we've all been living in these last few years, we're using modern technology to explore the various currents of people in our great country, kind of like a 21st century Lewis and Clark journey. I'm your host, Michael Whidden, here in Brooklyn, New York, and thank you for joining me in this exploration of America. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Brandon Erny, who lives in northeastern Vermont, but is spending the holiday season in my neighborhood of Cobble Hill selling Christmas trees. So I thought it'd really be great to learn a bit more about like what that's like. So first, you go by your last name of Ernie, correct?
This is correct. I feel like
Okay.
it has a little bit more connection with me rather than my first name, Brandon. Has a
Okay,
little
sure.
bit of good spin on it.
All right. Well, Ernie, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you doing? And could you share a bit of your story?
Yeah, I'm today's a good day. We're getting down to the last little nitty gritty bits of the selling of the Christmas trees, which always feels good. It's an exhausting adventure, I'll have to admit. But seeing the light at the end of the tunnel feels pretty exciting. I do
Yeah.
thoroughly enjoy being in Brooklyn, but going back home is always a good feeling as well.
So how does so like, when did you first come down here, and like when do you first start doing work? Like, is it basically just your first day of working for? Is it for Vermont Trees? Is that who you're working for?
So it's windswept. It's kind of like an independent gig now, as far as it used to be with a overarching person of Adam Park, who basically is the farmer that raises all the trees. So he's a part of Windswept Farm, who does the syrup and everything. So we kind of help facilitate the selling of his items. That he started and got to a point where he was able to get big enough to where having 8 lots. So he brought down people to kind of help sell his Christmas trees.
Hmm.
And he's been doing it ever since he was shoot 20s probably or something like that. And I mean he's been in it for a very long time. And yeah, so that's but we usually come down. I come down a little bit before Thanksgiving, and then we open the gates basically right after Thanksgiving, that first weekend on that Saturday. And
Hmm.
then we basically go until trees are sold out, which is we'd like to say 21st, 22nd is usually a really good goal for us.
Uh-huh. Well, and do you ever? I mean, that's a lot. How many? Can I ask like how many trees you guys go through in
Well, of
a
course,
like in a
my
season?
lot, let alone in here in Cobble Hill, has got to be around 1,000. It's 1,000 that we go through. I would say, of the tree selling, we're probably one of the smaller of the kind of groups that are out there. I mean, there's groups that are in Manhattan that are doing way more than that, but those operations are ginormous, and they're buying in a whole lot of trees from outside sources. Rather, what we're doing is pretty low key and small scale compared to obviously those fellows.
Mhm.
So we have like a certain allotment of trees that we sell each year. It's not like we can keep bringing in. We just don't want to do that. It's not like we're out to just get as much money as possible. It's merely bring the trees in, sell the trees, you know, and yeah, that's kind of just we want to meet a goal basically.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of where we're at. So
So, so how many, like a thousand trees, like how much land does that take up? Can I ask? Do you know?
yeah, I mean there is it's close proximity growing, so it's not as closely densely populated like you would see in like the forest. Obviously, you're seeing a lot of trees that are tall and skinny and spindly, reaching for light. But these are obviously grown like you would grow like vegetables, So it's a lot of acreage, like hundreds of acres, basically, that are used to grow. Because if you're thinking like some of these size trees that are all the way up to 18 years old, need quite the diameter of distance, and if you're starting to see trees grow close to each other, you start to see competition, which they might actually not create that nice form that we all like to see as a Christmas tree.
Hmm.
There's minimal kind of work done to them as far as like pruning. We do a little bit, and I'm primarily my big connection with all of this is I'm just kind of like a seller. So although I have gone out to the farm and I know Adam, and we've hung out a bit, I more am just the one that comes down and kind of like pedals the trees rather than there's different groups. There's sellers, there's drivers, and then there's like the people on the farm. So I'm more of like come down to the Brooklyn area, sell for a month, and then go back home.
Hmm.
So which is kind of cool to see. There's a ton of different hands that go into just one Christmas tree,
Yeah.
and that's what's the most important part that I like to get across to people that buy Christmas trees. It's like there's a lot that goes into it. The trucking, the late nights, the early mornings, the exhaustion, the tiresome, the energetic like salesperson. There's quite a bit that is involved. So
Yeah. Well, so when does your day start? I guess like today. Like, what do you expect on Monday? And like, which day is the slowest? Is Monday the slowest day of the week?
well, and different neighborhoods are going to call for different things. Ours tends to like middle of the week tends to be a little bit slower, which is just fine with me. I love to be able to like at least have another cup of coffee before getting stormed by the gate with people. But we get we get slammed with business the weekend after Thanksgiving, and then the following weekend is usually our like most hectic time, which is wonderful. But there it could be to the point where you're not even able to like go to the bathroom or drink
Mm,
water because you're just having to keep going,
yeah.
which is the thrill of it. You ride off that kind of like excitement, but it's a 9 to 9 every day. We don't do through the nights because we have the ability to basically lock up our stuff. A lot of people that do through the night shifts is like they just are on the side of the street, and they can't lock their things up. Um,
Mm,
the difficult parts of it is when we get unloads on the evening and then unloads in the morning. That's when it's you stay up really late to like midnight, 1 o'clock, sometimes even later, and then you have to wake up in like 2 3 hours and do it all over again and unload again. And then you have to, on top of that, you have a 12-hour shift that is on the busiest weekend. So you're just it's physically draining as well as mentally just as
yeah.
much.
Wow. what what's like the biggest what's the biggest tree that you guys sell?
Well, we've sold all the way up to 14 foot,
Okay.
14 foot
Wow.
tall. And a lot of those will go. We have churches that we put them in. So every year there's certain churches that we will bring a designated like 14 foot tree to, or there's lobbies in like hotels or apartments or whatever that we've have been put up. They let us sleep in their place, and so we can kind of we give them good gestures like doing this for them, and we decorate trees for these lobbies uh, and things. So it's like those are probably the most rewarding, just because like you see this tree that's been started like this tall, and then now all of a sudden is 14 feet tall and 8 feet wide, and you get to see it in its full form and full habitat in somebody's location, which is so neat.
Yeah. Wow. And then so how long does it take? Like, are you involved with the? I guess the like the Christmas. I mean, it sounds like Christmas tree. It seems like such a, I guess, like basic term. But like, I don't know like what the actual terminology is. But like, first of all, there's different kinds of Christmas trees, right?
Yep.
And are you involved with like the Christmas tree growing during the rest of the year, or if not, like what are you doing?
No, like I said, I'm primarily a seller. I have other things that are going on in my life, but I primarily am a seller basically just for this month. I take a time off of work, which I'm a independent contractor throughout the whole rest of the year, pretty much, you know, summer, spring, fall, winter, build, own my own business. I work with two other people that work with me.
Hmm.
Um, and it gives me the leeway to basically take this month off and kind of like come to a whole different location, whole different lifestyle, and live a different life. You kind of
Uh,
you feel unknown, which feels like awesome coming from where we are,
uh,
which is like far northeast kingdom where everybody knows everything about you,
mhm.
which is it's a very pleasant thing to feel, but it also feels nice to be a little independent and like unknown. You have that status
Yeah.
coming down in Brooklyn. So
Yeah. It's funny that I had a friend on one of my podcasts was talking, and as you know, like the whole point of the American Tributaries podcast is to like learn about different areas and learn about the differences and learn about the commonalities. And I was talking to this friend in Wyoming, and he was saying that there's something in common that people in New York City have with Wyoming, in that like in New York City, there's so many people that you can do whatever you want, nobody cares, and you can in Wyoming you can do whatever you want because there's so little people that nobody knows. And
yeah,
I think it goes to your point of saying like kind of coming here, there is so many people that you are, and I think that's what one of the draws of the city is. It allows you to kind of like, I guess, like get lost in anonymity, but also kind of like reconceive yourself.
a hundred
And
percent. 100%. I totally agree. Which is, it's actually that's a very interesting point. Because it definitely makes me feel like I'm a little more alive. Especially like coming down doing like a specific thing that does bring joy. Like you kind of come down and you have these communications and conversations with people, and they look at you as this like certain individual of like bringing this like this certain smell of like the Christmas tree, like and bringing this certain like atmosphere and this cheer, and it kind of it lifts you up a lot, and it kind of does makes you rethink yourself a little bit, which is like a very awesome thing, because I think where I'm at in Vermont, things move at a different pace, not, I mean, no different than here, but at the same time, a lot different at the same time, and it's, yeah, it's a great way to gain regain yourself a little bit, which
Mhm.
is kind of wonderful. And
Yeah.
and like seeing the same faces over and over, year after year, and them knowing you is like such a great relationship to create. And then all of a sudden, what you're doing is creating this smaller kind of community here, where it happens just once a month, and you can kind of like you create that small kind of like, yeah, community. Like I said, it's
Yeah.
it's it's a lot of fun. It is.
So where are you sleeping at night? Is there something at the
So
church or?
it used to be kind of like pretty much all over, like truck beds. We definitely would deck out truck beds and like lay foam and have heaters in there and like sleep in there. Box trucks. We had the church. We definitely had some times in the church, but as the Airbnb world kind of gets on the up and up, it's a little bit easier to basically just go online and find a place for a designated whole month. And it might be a
Mhm.
little expensive, but at the same time, it's so worth it. Being able to like have a peace of mind of going to a place that's like cozy and warm, and it's home basically for the month, and you treat it that way.
Yeah.
So we have been doing the Airbnb vibe, which is kind of neat. So
Yeah. And so what's your favorite? Where do you go to for your coffee?
well, I make my own coffee in the morning because we get up so
Okay.
damn early, which is great. But there's just a spot over by Henry Street that I always go to, and they know me really well, and so they've helped me out. I help them out. I bring Christmas trees to them, bring wreaths to them.
Okay.
But they always make They always make good coffee.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think
I
that's
think coffee's like the liquid starter. It keeps you going throughout the whole day. I think I pound too much throughout the whole time I'm here.
I think you probably, do you go to Folk and Fair? Is it the one across from the school?
It's over by well, it's actually okay, so it's Kane right by the BQE on the corner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dang. Oh, well, you go to the bodega.
Yeah. There's like a
Okay.
sandwich shop right there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. Well, that's bona fide. That's where my kids go
Yeah,
to for
exactly.
their
Totally.
snacks,
Yeah. Well, I
and they
first
have
heard
good egg
about it because there's
sandwiches.
sandwiches. And like, so
Yeah.
I went down there to get sandwiches all the time, and like it's like the cheapest, but yet the sandwiches are ginormous, and it's just like a full meal throughout the whole day. Like that
Yeah,
sits in my stomach and carries me basically throughout the whole time.
I bet you need that too.
Yeah. Totally.
And
Yeah.
what do you do for like your dinners then? Like where, I mean, you're working till 9 and then dealing with trees
Yeah. I mean,
offloading.
a lot of I mean, the coolest thing about, obviously everyone does come to like the cities for like the different types of food. Like that's like one of the biggest perks about basically coming down here too, is like getting a whole different variety of like flavors and taste buds and whatnot. Whereas
Yeah.
so yeah, we definitely make a point to try to go out after, on the Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. We go out and grab drinks after like a celebration. Especially Sunday night is a big celebration, just because like we got over a whole weekend, which everybody feels the same way. Where you're just like so run down, tired, but yet like let's go have drinks and like get all together. Like it just like it feels really good.
Yeah.
Um, but um, usually it's just like eat at the lot, really.
Hmm.
Get food at the lot. But what's cool about where we are is there's a CSA that goes on every Tuesday, and so at the church, so they give us big bags of food every Tuesday, like vegetables, kale. There's a farmer that's outside or upstate New York or something that comes down and does the CSA share, um, community service agriculture, and and so it's just an awesome thing to have. It's an awesome, like they give us a whole bunch of vegetables, so we cook at home. That's another perk of having that as
Uh,
an Airbnb, is you actually have a kitchen. So
yeah. Yeah. And do you order in much for like pizza? We've got favorite pizza places.
dude, Lucali's.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I went
Yeah.
there once. We randomly got in, and I didn't really know how like well known it was. I was like, sweet, we got into this pizza joint, and my partner, who actually comes down and sells me, she was like, we got into this pizza place. Are you kidding me? And I was like,
Yeah.
all right, I didn't really know what, like extreme was, but the pizza was like fantastic. It was so
Yeah.
good. Like, I guess there's like famous people, and we do see a lot of famous people at the lot too, selling
Do you? Yeah.
trees. So I guess a lot of people are around. I'm
Yeah.
not a very big like movie buff or like show, so when like I was selling trees to like I guess there's Michael Cera, we had one, Megan
Yeah.
Gyllenhaal, which like I was like selling her tree, and I was just like doing the whole spiel, doing all the things, making people laugh, trying to do my best, and then like they finally walked out with the tree, and then like the next person I helped in line was like, "Do you have any idea who that was?" And I was like, "What?" Like
Yeah.
I don't really know. They're like, "That was Megan Gyllenhaal." So it's just funny. It's just funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Daniel Craig lives around the corner from
Yeah,
me too.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So
it's I mean it's an interesting part of an interesting element of the neighborhood is like you just kind of um it's the kind of that anonymity that you were referring to, like people like everybody will act really cool and subdued around them, but then once they leave, you're like, oh my god, do you know who that was?
yeah,
But
totally.
I think it's kind of like the unspoken bargain.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course, I'm sure they want to fly under the radar too a little bit. You
Yeah.
know.
My son, we had Steve Nash was the coach of the Nets, and he
Oh yeah.
would show up at my son's basketball, the like the schoolyard when they'd be playing basketball, and actually his son played with them like a couple times, and
Wow, that's awesome.
yeah,
He's like
that was
coaching the whole crew.
no, he would actually he would be. I think I remember one time he was there. He was like I think on a he was on a phone call with somebody
Got to
like
look
walking.
busy. I feel
Yeah,
like it's always
exactly.
looking busy. You got to look busy.
Yeah, exactly. So, what would you like? What do you wish people knew more about what's going on in the background? Like, so, like for me, like my if I were to put myself in your shoes, the only like comparison point that I have is like I sold wine for 12 years, so
Oh
I
yeah,
understand what it's like to be a wine retailer and
yeah,
how like when things are busy, you kind of want one kind of way of doing things, and when things aren't busy, there's
yeah,
another, and like I've
yeah,
seen, somebody who spends an hour agonizing over a wine and then they just kind of buy what they originally asked about anyway. And
yeah. Exactly.
if
It's the
and
same. It's the same vibe with the tree.
yeah.
When you open 5 or 6 trees and they go back to the first one, you're like, well, you kind of like it's either you for love at first sight, or you have to go around everything for them to come back to the first one that they like originally picked.
Yeah. But I guess,
Um,
it mattered. I mean, like when we met you, I was with my wife and my two boys. My daughter was, I think, was studying or something. But like, it becomes this very like invested interest, and like I stepped away from the decision making because like before it would be like me and my wife, and then
yeah,
the kids didn't really care that much, or if they
yeah,
did, it was in like they didn't really have strong opinions. But as my boys have gotten older and have strong opinions, I'm just like, you know what, we don't need four people like with firm
we too many
opinions
cooks in
on
the
this.
kitchen, as they would say.
Yeah, so I'm like, I'll trust that my wife and my two boys will all kind of arrive at the right decision. But are there times where where like what's like, I mean, again, like what would you wish people would understand? Like, is there some thing where like I don't know if it's like rude, but like kind of is there just a certain thing that you wish people knew more about what was going on so that maybe it would make your job easier?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you always get those. You always get certain individuals that I feel like everyone has. There's not everyone. I should take that back. There's a lot of people that have this burned-in image in their brain about their like perfect tree, and obviously we can give that to them. And then there's the people that just love like the fun kind of like quirky trees. Like I said, we don't prune our trees like crazy. We kind of just like we let them kind of grow as they are. We assist as far as like giving shape and whatnot. But like we've got oddballs, we've got rounded ends, we got balsams that look like a circle, but people like think it's the joyous thing and they put them in their house. I think like overall probably the biggest is just like I know cost is always an issue, and I know for what we do, our costs are extremely low. We don't price ours outrageous. We just obviously have an idea of what we'd like in return and get that. But it just is like there's so much that goes into a Christmas tree that like it's important to me to get the point to say like it's the cost basically are showing kind of what is going into it. And there's obviously people that I know that the Christmas trees are double what we are, and nothing's going. They're buying from outside states, like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and whatnot. But there's so much care and coordination that goes into basically this one Christmas tree that's sitting in your house, Michael.
Yeah, yeah,
um, which is it's kind of the wild aspect of Christmas, I think, which is like interesting. It's like the underside, like the not the dark side, but like the behind the scenes that happen. Like the 2 o'clock unloads with a tractor trailer of like 1,000+ trees, and you're just like hustling and like you're like slinging trees, and then you just move on to the next spot. There's like so much of a background that goes into just somebody's tree,
Yeah,
you know. But it's also a really fun kind of like product to be selling because of
yeah,
how like beautiful they are, and that it is like something that someone's going to be staring at for a whole month.
yeah.
you
And the
know
and the memories and the fact that that's the centerpiece of
Precisely.
for many kids, you're a
Precisely.
part of their memories, their best memories of their childhood.
Yeah, and they're gonna like remember me, like these little
Yeah,
kids that are now, when they were like a baby. I've only been doing this for 4 years, but like seeing them as they were like an infant and now 4 years old, like remembering me and saying like, oh, like calling me or like Erny, our Christmas tree's coming, or and like
yeah,
running to the door and like super excited, and you've got the Christmas tree on your shoulder, and they're like so thrilled, and you see the parents like stepping back and looking at their kids like in sheer excitement. Like that is what it's all about. It's like
yeah,
it's a really sweet, like endearing feeling to have.
yeah.
I just feel tired after every day.
I'm sure. Do you take time off after the Christmas season?
Yeah, me and my partner are going to stay here for the holidays. We think, depending on how things go at the end of the season. But I got so much work lined up that it's hard for me to really step back too much. But I'll probably take a week off and just kind of like
Hmm.
regain my bearings. Catch back up with my dog, which I really miss. And just I log in the winter also, so a lot of that is like a huge part of like that to me is not work. So I'm excited to get back in the woods and start working the woods a little bit more. So that'll definitely be a big part of like um, going back up north.
Hmm.
But yes, I will probably sit on my ass a little bit and like enjoy a nice home brewed cup of coffee.
Yeah. So, were you born in Vermont? Have you lived there your entire life?
No, I was born in Wisconsin.
Okay.
So I was
And
born in the
when,
Wisconsin, Milwaukee area, and I lived in northern Wisconsin for a while, which is absolutely gorgeous. And then that's I went to so I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and then moved up to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Stayed there for all my memories, basically, and went to school up in northern Wisconsin for a year and a half. Came to school in Vermont for a little bit, and then basically dropped out, thinking I wasn't going to school, and went out west and just like I took a train out west and just kind of took a bunch of oddball jobs and just tried to like figure out what was going on out there and what I was interested in. Stopped getting off the train in Montana, Idaho, and like Washington area, Oregon, and Northern California, just doing a whole bunch of stuff, and was getting ready to get myself all the way out to New Zealand. Going to work on a dairy farm out there,
mhm.
which was like a big push to do, getting my green card and everything. And it kind of like dawned on me a little bit of like what I'm trying to actually do and what I actually wanted to try to be. And figured I've only got like a year left of school to accomplish, which I don't know what that would have done if I didn't do it, or I went to a very small liberal arts school. It was like 200 people, so super super individualized, which was awesome. But that was out in northern Wisconsin or northern Vermont. So I went back out there and went to school and finished up there. So all that to say, no, not born in Vermont, but
Okay.
Wisconsin nonetheless.
Okay. Your roots started in Missouri. You actually sound like you took a little bit of like the Lewis and Clark journey,
Yeah, yeah.
like
Really
going
going
from
out west.
Missouri up the Mississippi and then going
Yeah,
out to.
yeah,
So, um,
yeah. I got to thank my
so
parents for that one.
yeah. So how long have you lived in Vermont then now?
Shoot, it's getting to be 8 years, which is a
Okay.
7 or 8 years, which is pretty wild.
Uh-huh.
It was
No.
2016, 2015 or something like that. 15
Mhm.
maybe. So it's hard to believe that I would call it settled, but like settled in an area long enough. I was always somebody that was like, after like a year felt long to me in a place, and I was like, I got to get up and go.
Mhm.
Like I just need to go do something else, to see something else. And that's why I think full circle, just coming to like Brooklyn is like a great escape, and it feels like I'm going completely to a whole new area, which I am. So it's like great. Like the minute I'm getting sick of Vermont a little bit, I'm like, all right, cool. I get to come to Brooklyn and then feel that for a whole whole month, and then get sick of it and go back up north.
Yeah.
So it starts to feel new again.
And so in the area in Vermont that you live in is called the Northeast Kingdom. I'd never heard that term before.
Yeah, Northeast Kingdom. It's basically this. I honestly, I feel shameful to say, but I don't know the actual reasoning why that is. I'm sure it's dated way, way back.
Mm.
But yeah, it's a far northeast spot of Vermont. That yeah, I mean, there's very, very minimal things there. I mean, we have small like towns that are around that I can go grab items at or whatever. But we just have two stores in our town, and they're both general stores. So you kind of get the same lick.
Uh-huh. How far from the Canadian border are you?
About 40 minutes. So we're
Okay,
right
wow.
up there. Yep, yep. A
And
lot
then
of people, our spot is becoming a little bit more, I wouldn't say gentrified, but a lot more touristy, whereas like people are moving there a lot. I mean, the whole COVID kind of outbreak really pushed a lot of people from bigger cities to like move to Vermont, which mostly second homes, which is good for me as a builder because I'm building those homes, but also it's kind of like, wait a second, I kind of like the purity of like what Vermont is and not having all these like second homes taking place or like more, yeah. So, um, yeah, yeah. It's so a lot of people are coming up there. It's a big ski area. A lot of people
Mhm.
go cross country skiing there. There's a spot called the Outdoor Center, which people like a lot of Olympic athletes actually go there and do cross country and rowing and stuff. So it's in the summers and winters it definitely gets a little busy. So it's not like I'm out in the complete boonies.
Yeah. Well, we were in Burlington a few years ago, and it was a lovely area. And I know that's not the same area, but like, compared to Brooklyn, it's a closer vibe. It's a bit closer
Totally.
approximation of the vibe
Yeah.
in the Northeast
Well,
area
yeah,
than,
and Lake Champlain is absolutely beautiful. I mean,
yeah.
it's such a good lake.
Yeah. So what's like when you think about you because you're straddling in this world of like a very like kind of like more like rural part, and then to Brooklyn, like what's one of the biggest like kind of like adjustments for you or things that are like startling or or eye opening one way or the other?
The amount of cops that are here.
Uh,
We don't have any. We don't even have a police force where I'm at, so you don't
really?
see anything like that. Well, I think a lot of it is it's the what I think I realized toward the end of my stay in Brooklyn is like what my brain is picking up on that my like consciousness is not taking in. Like my brain is picking up on all the noise and all the outside kind of like ruckus, and but like, consciously I like blink that out probably, just to feel sane maybe a little bit. But like it's but at the end of the month, like my brain just feels so tired that I feel like I'm like catching up. There's like all colors, and there's people constantly, and like you're seeing all these like your brain's like taking it all in, and I feel like it's interesting to me to feel that like exhaustion. It's a different type of exhaustion, that like you're trying to keep. I feel like I'm trying to like, keep up with it, So that's yeah, it's an interesting piece of it for sure.
Yeah, no, it's one of the like the caricatures of people when they think about like New York is, oh, nobody says hi to you, and I think it's a survival thing because it's what you're
Yeah,
saying. Like, there's so much stimulation, there's so many
yeah,
people that you just couldn't do it. So the you can't like kind of do it halfway,
yeah,
and I don't think it's like necessarily being rude. I think it's just like there's too much out there, so you kind of learn to I don't know if I say tune it out, but a lot of the stuff just becomes white noise.
yeah. Which
I mean,
which is
some
funny though because my first time coming to Brooklyn, or so we're in Vermont. Like you say hi to everybody.
yeah.
Everybody's waves. When you drive by, when you pass people in the vehicle, everybody waves. It's just a constant thing to do. You always say hello to people. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Always. I can't go to the general store without getting stuck for 45 minutes just talking to people. When all I want
Is
to do
this
is just grab like a thing of milk.
Are these people that you all know, or just
Yeah, I
you
mean,
just have to
like I
be
said,
that?
it's such a and being a builder in the area, your name kind of goes. I used to work in Stowe, which is a bigger spot. That was a little more anonymous, working with the crew of like 8 to 15, building homes, and then now being a builder in the Northeast Kingdom, working for a lot of these people that I know personally. Um, yeah, your name travels fast, but like you go to the store, you just know everybody in the area. You're not going to go a day without recognizing somebody. But it was funny because like when I first came down here, my first reaction to seeing everybody was like, "Hello, hey, how's it going? Hey." So I'm like, all these people around me, I'm like, "Hey, how's it going? Hey, how's it going? You know, and like my buddy was like, you just don't do that here. You don't say hello to everybody because first off, there's too many people to say hello to, and second off, like no one really does that.
Yeah.
you know. But it is funny when you get like when you say good morning, you get the, like the look up and you're like, good morning, like oh hey, how's it going? You know, like that fun, like oh yeah, people do actually want to say good morning to each other.
Yeah, no, I think while it is a survival instinct or it's understandable, I think that it's. I mean, and I definitely plead guilty to this too. Like I know, like we've been. My kids go more than I do, but like the Bonafide Deli, we've been in their neighborhood for almost 18 years. And honestly, I don't know the name of the woman whose family owns it, and I should. So I
Yeah,
think that there you get a little bit too closed off, and people become like maybe faces but nameless faces. And I think that that's the one thing I think I definitely should feel more aware of, is at least like capturing names and being a little bit
yeah,
more engaged, because you do
yeah,
go on to autopilot a bit too much.
yeah, and that's like a really beautiful thing to kind of like have that awareness as like somebody living in Brooklyn, and especially like stepping outside of Brooklyn, and it's the culture shock. That's like the biggest part of my enjoyment coming down is like it's the culture shock. It's a wholly totally different way of living. Um, and like I read about Brooklyn on the news when stuff's going on. It's a very focal spot, and yeah, it's just a good thing for all of us to just try to like really be aware of. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I totally.
And I think I saw this when, in 2020 we were in a house outside of Buffalo,
Yeah,
just to kind of get away, because we have a family of five, and like legally it's a 2-bedroom apartment, so it was pretty cramped. And at the beginning of the pandemic, it got very cramped. Because there weren't even any like playgrounds or parks that were open at that point. So we got a house up in Buffalo, and I totally actually it's so weird. I totally forget where I was going to go with this.
happens to the best of us.
Yeah, but no, but so the point was, like, we were there and we saw the news coverage of like all of like when George Floyd was murdered, all the things that were happening in the
Oh yeah,
news. And it was very interesting to see that the very, very small sliver that people were getting about like Brooklyn. And I was like, if I was on the outside looking in, I would have one perspective of the city. I know exactly where stuff's
yeah,
happening, and I know that 99% of Brooklyn is not that, but I know
yeah.
that what people are seeing, they're just hearing the word Brooklyn and seeing these images, and they're just going to assume all of the city is like that. And I
100%,
imagine at least you have that perspective being in
totally.
certain parts of it.
And that's like part of like what news is, right?
Yeah.
Like you read this thing that someone wrote about and is like it's like it's like non-biased kind of thing, and you just take it in, think about it, and like have your own opinion about it, and create this image based on just that reading or that article. But it's so different coming down, or you don't feel it, you don't feel that, but it's and that was really the biggest thing, even like with the COVID going on, like hearing all of this stuff going on in Brooklyn and just being like, whoa, that is like really intense, but I can't connect on it to a different level. But when I came down here and talking to people and seeing their faces and their emotional distress or whatever, it was like it just totally was like a big slap in the face of like, whoa, I had no idea. Like I can only paint an image in my head so many times, or I can only uh like I can only conjure up the feeling, but I can't actually have it, and like these people actually had it, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, totally, totally. So yeah, it's kind of a wild perspective. And that just goes to the point of just getting outside of the comfort zone and realizing like what else is out there, and like feeling that for a while, and like
Yeah.
not being set in your ways, which is really important. I feel like it's a really important feeling, not going against what you like, but just like having the ability to step outside and feel uncomfortable and like feel kind of like, on edge a little bit, or excited in a different way, and kind of harnessing that and like living by that, and I think it's like a very wonderful kind of like way to be, I mean, it's like a natural high, you're like
Yeah.
having that.
Yeah, no, there's a quote by John Stein. By no, F. Scott Fitzgerald, where he says like the mark of a first-rate mind is the ability to hold two opposing thoughts in your mind at the same time, and be able to still function. And I think that was kind of what the pandemic, I thought, for me at least, forced me to do is to try to wear the other hats too. Because from this perspective, like, to me, like what it felt like was, we were living, it was like a dystopian city, like from the point of view of like living here, it was
Yeah,
so empty. And like when you could drive into Manhattan, no traffic, no parking issues, and that might seem fun, it's a great story to talk about, but like the reality is it was so disillusioning. And like there were times like the BQE, there was like nobody on the road, and like that's really uncomfortable when you know that that's not just like an anomaly, that there's a reason why that's happening. And I think, like, when I started to think about what that would mean, it would be like, just imagine, I don't know, like looking at a mountain that used to be covered by trees, and then the next day you go out there and it's just stripped of everything. And that's what the city felt like, is there were so few people. I mean, that's the lifeblood. So there was a lot of things that kind of took the reality of what was happening, and then you had like these visual, more subtle reminders, running out of toilet paper and other stuff, which, in New York City, you're just not used to things running out. Maybe it might be different when you only have like a general store or two, like
yeah,
where you're
yeah,
living. I don't know, but there was just a lot of like markers and cues all the time about why this is a very different situation. But,
yeah.
you know,
And
but
like coming full circle back to kind of like just the Christmas trees is like it's the same kind of vibe with the toilet paper as it is with the Christmas tree when like we're on our last couple days and we don't have a full stock shipment or that perfect Christmas tree for that one individual and they think we're crazy. Well, why don't you have that? What is wrong? What's going on with you guys? And it's like life is not endless supply of things. Like
yeah,
it all
yeah,
comes from something that takes embodied energy to make. Like it's
yeah,
not just like we've got it, and I
right.
think like that's another kind of like like kind of I reminder to individuals when when we're selling is like, hey, it's things are fleeting. You have we don't just continuously shuck all these trees into the city and like yeah, it's an interesting kind of like wake up call, I think, to like what your point was with like the toilet paper is like the shelves aren't always going to be stocked. The Christmas trees are always the same. Like it takes strength in numbers to create something,
Yeah,
and like yeah. So there's always an end. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Just as much as
yeah,
like the
yeah,
Christmas trees get lined up to go to the chipping pile, there's an end.
yeah. So you mean like, so like I think we have an 8 foot tree. Like, do you know like how long does it take for a whatever for an 8 foot tree to grow from like a seed or whatever it is?
I mean, from a seed, it's a whole different.
Is it a seed? I don't even know. Like, how do
No, I
what,
mean it all is totally. It all is. A lot of stuff gets cloned. A lot of stuff gets grafted. Things like that. But that 8 foot tree is probably going to be right around like 10 years, maybe pushing a little bit more or so. So it's kind of like a foot a year. It could be
Mhm.
throughout the growing
Wow.
season.
Oh my
Yeah, and that's
god.
just and that's ranging. That's
Right.
ranging. But like, and that's like there's so much that goes into basically a tree in particular growth. I mean there's obviously we're feeling a little bit of a different effect as far as like climate change. Is like we almost had like a whole nother month of like growing, and a lot of times they're trying to right after the big frost they start cutting. Which is kind of like in the middle of November. Or like sometimes beginning of November. And that's not like cutting the whole shipment. I mean, that's like the first handful of trees, which usually are Fraser firs. Um, but there was not a big frost, so like that came way late, closer to Thanksgiving. So then they basically had a whole nother month to like grow into themselves. But so yeah, so that'll make more that gives the tree to allow to grow taller for a longer period of time. But yeah, so basically that 8 foot is pretty much like yeah, I would say like 8 to 10 years old. So
Wow.
they're out in the middle of a field getting sun and water constantly. So it's like, who wouldn't want to grow that fast?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, is there much active like care for the trees, or are they able to kind of get by on their own?
There definitely is. We do give a like it's an all organic kind of like fertilizer, and I use that word fertilizer as just like it's like a nutrient based item that like we would take to I don't know. It's not like we're doing these sprayed. It's not chemicals, right? It's
Right.
it's
Yeah.
like natural items, neem oil, fish emulsion, things like that that
Mm.
are all from the earth that we basically help. Basically, that gives them a little more strength, durability. Um, Watering takes place, but when it gets to a certain age, there's not there's not a whole heck of a lot of like um, doings. I mean, there's constant care. I mean, they're in a field, mowing takes place, things like that. So there is care being done, but as far as like to the trees particularly, I mean, there's shaping. There's a couple prunings and stuff because you don't want that back to that perfect Christmas tree. They don't have those long, crazy branches.
Right.
So we try to hone that in just a bit, but don't allow too much over pruning to where it looks like stubs. And this
Hmm.
is all the stuff that like I personally don't do. But this is through I've heard with people and talking. But yeah, as far as like there's not a ton um, of like hands-on work,
Yeah.
So, but there is there
Okay.
is like there is a good amount of care for sure.
Okay. And how long of a drive is it for the truck to go from wherever the trees are?
That is a
Yeah.
job I'm so glad I don't do. I would
Uh-huh.
much rather be sitting. I would much rather be like talking with you, about your Christmas tree and showing your family three different varieties, so you all could like argue about which one you wanted the most. It's like a 7-hour drive one way.
Wow.
So it's like they're constantly cutting, wrapping, baling, stacking on the truck, driving down, unloading, driving back, and then basically a couple days, and then they cut, wrap, load, drive down, drive back. So it's a lot. It's a lot, and that's goes back to the point of basically our trees. If we're sticking on the topic of just like Christmas trees, is ours are guaranteed to be the freshest, the most beautiful, the long lasting because of our tactics that we do and creating a very good product. I mean, it's like yeah. Instead of like a lot of these places that are in like selling Christmas trees like and like bigger farms selling to places like over in Atlantic or whatever like here in Brooklyn it's like they're just buying in trees they don't know the farmers but they're like cut
Right.
months before they're shipped out
Oh,
and that's I don't
really?
want me to throw anybody under the bus I'm not trying to
No.
be rude or whatever it's just more of like our tactic of selling is way different than other people
Right. That's interesting. I
so
never even thought to ask. Like, so when was this tree cut down?
yeah
So
exactly a
you're
lot of
saying
people
like for like you guys like you would say what in the last week or a couple days
in the
ago?
last couple days. Usually, like they are cut within the last couple days of delivery. So that means
Hmm.
that your tree is still as freaking like fresh as basically it was still on the stump, like still in the ground. So
Hmm. Wow.
yeah.
Uh, um, and then what are the different kinds of trees that you sell? Like different kinds of you mentioned Douglas fir. What are the other? Do you sell only those kind, or are there others?
Well, so we don't do Douglas firs. We do Douglas firs is more of like a West Coast tree.
Okay.
That's it's
Yeah.
a totally different style of
Okay.
growing. But we do Fraser's balsam. There's a Korean there's a Korean fir basically called a viche that we bring down.
Hmm.
We bring down white pines. We sometimes bring down some wild trees that are literally like they're not pruned. They're totally like they just have their own attitude.
Hmm.
Um, so because we just like we try to like to accommodate for everybody. We try to bring some spice of variety, so it's not just this like standardized kind of thing. And some people crave the viches. They only want the viches. Some people love those wild trees that have like the four tops that are going all over the place. And they have these branches that are like 4 foot long and like they don't look like Christmas trees. Like people just love that stuff. So that's what I love doing with Windswept Farm is like we love to just bring that kind we're like weird Vermonters. We love to just bring that kind of like different style of attitude about Christmas. Like it can be whatever you make it. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be this traditional looking kind of like Rockefeller tree that's just like woo, it could be anything.
Yeah.
So
Now, do you when you deliver trees, do you guys set it up too, or is it really just kind of like
full
deliver and then leave
service,
it?
Michael. Full
You put it up.
service.
You put it
Oh
up
yeah.
too.
Full
Really?
service. We bring it in there. We put it up. We they get wrapped and we cut that out. And then basically, like I've turned the trees, I brought it out, I've decorated trees for people. The best is when you
Really?
get somebody that thinks the tree is the perfect size, they bring it home, and then all of a sudden it's like 2 feet too tall. I get a personal phone call, and they're like, our tree is 2 feet too tall. What can we do? I get right on. I get right on it. I come with my saw. I go into their house. I cut that stump 2 feet shorter. I make it
uh,
look good. I put it back up. I get it all tight and perfectly plumb. And we stand back and we just laugh about it. It's great. I had one. I mean, not to go on a tangent, but I had one actually. A feller yesterday came and bought a tree that 2 years ago he swore it was like, this is gonna be the perfect tree. My wife and my kids are gonna love it. It must have been as wide as it was tall. Puts it in his house. All of a sudden, I see him coming running down the street. Like a couple hours later, coming running down the street. He comes in. He's like, I need somebody to help me. I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? He's like, my wife hates the tree. She's like, it's so big. So we go over there. She's sitting on like the couch, kind of like, oh my gosh, it's like spilling over the tables. It's all over the place. So I'm pruning the heck out of it. We're pruning it. I'm custom shaping this tree, and we finally get to a point where everybody was happy, and like it is such a good memory now. Like they all came back and we're laughing about that one time when the tree was basically like spilling over out the window and onto the couch and everything. So it's stuff like that I just love. I love that. I love that.
I saw there was one place I went to, it was a restaurant, and they actually had the tree upside down.
Oh,
Like
really?
so it was connected to the ceiling, which is actually really interesting because that eliminates the footprint issue, like it doesn't take up a lot of space on the floor,
Yeah.
and all the ornaments were kind of dangling in a way that they don't get lost in the tree. They're all kind of like hanging on their own. So it was
Yeah.
really, it was really interesting. I don't have a creative bone in my
I
body,
feel
so I
like that's
couldn't
like a
actually
Dr.
pull it off.
Seuss style.
Yeah, no, but that was really interesting.
I'd be curious. Are they like giving water through an IV
Yeah, I
right
don't
into the side
know.
of the trunk?
I don't know. How important is it to like keep your water full? Do you know? Do you know the answer to that? Because
I go.
I'm not.
You got to keep it as full as you possibly can. Don't let that
Uh,
tree go dry.
okay.
It's one that's the biggest part about our trees is like with the freshness is they drink a ton of water constantly,
Mhm.
constantly, constantly. So it's like keeping it full is the best thing you can do. Well, and it'll last. This is the spiel. Keeping it full is the best thing you can do. It'll last you into the New Year's, no doubt about
Okay. Well, by Christmas, at least in our household, we're usually like, okay, we're done. Okay, when's the first chance to get rid of it?
it. Yeah, as you leave the trail of needles all the way down your steps and out the door.
Yeah. Well, we are building issues bags, so we
Oh, that's right. That's right.
yeah, so
That's
we can
perfect.
get away with that.
Everyone's got their way.
Yeah.
In Dumbo, we have a specific elevator in one of the apartments just for us. They put padding all the way around
Uh-huh.
all of it because like it's been so many years that I'm sure that we've like brought a giant tree in and we're scraping all the sides and it's like a really fancy hotel or motel or whatever
Yeah.
apartment building. So they pad it all off. No one uses it but us. So it's like I feel like we've gained our stripes on that one.
Yeah. You guys are really almost like the embodiment of like you're the closest that people are gonna get to like elves and Santa Claus.
Yeah, I hope I look like an elf. Sometimes I feel like I'm one. I don't have the curled shoes yet. I'm almost there.
Yeah. No, I think but the spirit of this, seriously, if you think about it, like when people see you, like they're there, like I mean, getting a Christmas tree is the biggest thing. Like it's one of like my family when I was younger, we just had like one of those like the artificial trees in a box, and I mean that's kind of its own specialness. But I think the hunt for your tree is kind of a
Yeah,
nice little rite of passage, and it
yeah,
really marks the beginning of the season.
yeah. I mean, that's why you saw our lot. That's why I like where I'm selling. It's like we have these stands that we can put the trees up in. It's a big like courtyard kind of thing, so you can kind of like walk through, and you get kids that love it, and they're like playing around in the trees, and you get to kind of like look at all of them and like smell it and feel the trees, and they're not just all bound up and tight. You actually have this experience, which like we hear it a lot. I hear it a lot where it's like the families are so happy that their kids can be in nature because
Yeah.
like being in Brooklyn, there's not. I mean, you got Park Slope. There is spots that have that. It's like, but you hear that in their voice. Like the parents are just like, this is like really exciting for us. Like we would look forward to this every year that we get to like walk through these like trees and like we get to smell. And the kids are so excited. They're
Yeah.
grabbing branches. They're running around. It's like it's a cool little piece. Like that's the part. It's not just selling a tree. It's like it's everything. It's all inclusive. It's just
Yeah.
a piece of joy. Really, it's great.
Yeah. That's well, it's great because here we are. Basically, I'm looking at my calendar on my wall. We're almost mid-December, and you still seem to have some good positive energy. So
Yeah,
good for
I
you.
got to keep the smoke alive.
Yeah, that's some good coffee you're drinking.
I'll share it if you want some.
I think I'm past that point now. So, well, that's great. Well, I mean, I'm sure you've probably got people and trees to tend to, but
Well, I'm getting all
before.
the messages of trees now, so I can see
Okay, all
that
right,
happening
good. So
currently. So I'm being
we should
summoned
probably
back
wrap up.
to the tree world.
Okay, yeah. So, well, to wrap up, I guess the last thing I like to ask is like, so, like, what gives you hope at the end of the day?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I think seeing the smiles, I think on a lot of these younger kids, and like being able to like me personally talk to these little kids and share like I like share like what I think is wonderful and like joy and like getting them to smile and like give me good feedback um gives me a lot of hope of just like feeling good about like people, and like human connection, which this is what it's all about. Selling Christmas trees is human connection. So I think that's kind of the piece of the piece of the hope that I love the most. That's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's a very very in keeping with the season as well.
Yeah, yeah,
It's true.
exactly, exactly.
It's true. So great. All right. Well, Ernie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you so
Oh
much
yeah,
for
of course.
contributing to our Christmas this year. And I'm sure I'll see you in the neighborhood. And if nothing else, we'll see you next year. But thank you, and stay in touch if you need any tips for where to go, at night or whatever. Let me know. But
You
we'll
got it,
see you around for
man. Thank
sure.
you so much.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much, and thank you to our listeners for listening. And may you go out and explore our country with curiosity, respect, compassion, and humility. All right. Take care, and thank you.
Enjoy.